Finally, the stream kicked in. We are live here once again on the podcast for Freaky Friday. And on Freaky Friday, we have the 3 F's: fitness, philosophy, and fun. How you like that, Dr. Jim?
Nice. Like it a lot.
And live Q&A as well. So you guys are welcome to submit and send any questions that you have. Our theme today is one that has been suggested and been a couple times from a couple different people, but I decided to sort of compile it. People have sometimes wanted to know what is our favorite something, but then also our guilty pleasure of that something. So like, what's your what's your favorite? I'll do an easy one to start. What's your favorite movie? Jim's might be Saving Private Ryan. And what's Jim's favorite guilty pleasure movie? It might be Mean Girls, for example. Not saying that's but it could be.
I've seen the latter, but I think that's probably good guilty pleasure fodder there.
Yeah. Right. So we're gonna do our a little opener here with this. And we've got we got on the list here. We've got our favorites and guilty pleasures of workouts, 80s hair bands, and these are not just my ideas. These have actually been suggested. Philosophers, arguments for theism. What else was on the list that I sent you, Jim? You have to 90s movies. I think was 90s one of movies. Them. Recent books that we've read. So we've
video games.
Games, right? Yeah. So if you guys have any that you want to suggest and throw in, please do. Or if you just have any other questions, all is fair game on Freaky Friday. We're just here to have a good time. Jim's got his Sublime shirt on, which is fitting for talking about 90s bands. They're 90s, right? Yeah.
They're 90s, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of guilty pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We my wife and I we were dating in like 99 2000, right? Like really, I think kind of spring of 2000. We had met, like 2 years ago, fall 98. But anyway, and so that was like the heyday of Sublime, right? So the kind of the soundtrack of our courtship was Sublime, right?
Okay. So it's always going to have a high place for you.
Yeah, so we play a lot of Sublime around the house. I'm not so proud of this. And occasionally we administer pop quizzes to our children based on Sublime.
Sublime. So is this your first guilty pleasure? Is it Sublime?
Yeah, it's guilty pleasure, but I'm not even sure how guilty I feel.
Yeah, because like the question is like, would you change rooms before you engage it? Right? Like,
yeah,
I'm not going to change rooms before I put on Saving Private Ryan, but I'll probably change rooms before I put on What Women Want. Right?
Exactly. Yeah,
I'll bring my laptop upstairs.
Yeah. So like I might be sitting talking to one of my teenage kids, and I'll say, okay, pop quiz. We took a trip to where? And their answer will be Garden Grove, right? I mean, so stuff like that. So.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah. So Sublime, I know Sublime now because they are just like the band that has been resigned to playing some stage at Summerfest every year, pretty much.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, their head guy, OD'd, right? So what they have.
Am I wrong about that? Are they still around? Because I feel like Sublime has always been at Summerfest for like as long as I've been at Summerfest.
Yeah, they have a new guy who's the lead singer. Okay, someone Rome, and it's like but like Sublime was the lead singer, right? And so. I'm not a huge fan of the new stuff.
Right. Interesting. Okay, where do you want to kick this one off, Jim? Which one fascinates you most?
Oh gosh, let's start at the top of your list. Let's go kettlebell workout. So
let's just do general workout. Doesn't have to be kettlebell.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. What's favorite and then guilty pleasure? Wow, guilty pleasure is going to be a hard one with this, but Freaky Friday's meant to have us think on the spot. So, My favorite kettlebell workout is, oh dang, I don't think I have a good answer for this off the top of my head either. It's you go first. Let me think about this.
Well, okay, just kind of favorite workout in general, right? There's a question of like, what am I doing when it's working? So I don't want to like overthink this, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with the workout I know I can do any day, and with any implement. And get it done and come out of it feeling like $1 million, right? And that is, there's always my standard EMOM thing, but we won't go to that well again. It's, this is one of the standards in the On It 6 programs. It's their yellow workout, which is just 5 Tabatas, right?
Okay.
So you just pick 5 exercises and you do 8 rounds of 20 on, 10 off of each of those 5 exercises. Obviously, you're not going full lung burn Tabata the whole time, right?
Yeah.
But you'll get through. It'll take you 25 minutes, and you'll get a great workout in, right? Yeah.
You feel awesome. What exercises is that restricted to?
Anything. Like, I mean, I've like they, Onnit has it with kettlebells, with maces, with
those
house sets.
modalities work well. Obviously, once you start
Yeah.
pushing like super heavy front
Yeah.
squats at the
Yeah.
barbell, it's probably going to
Exactly. I
break
wouldn't
down.
recommend
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And, I've done them with bands now, right? And so it's kind of my standard travel workout. Whenever I'm traveling, I just find a park and do that. Yeah.
I like that. So, okay, I've thought of one now. This is not a kettlebell workout, but you could put kettlebells in it. It's what I did yesterday. So we were going to the Y, and I was going to do my normal gym thing, but the air conditioner broke there, so the whole Y was closed. So we went to a park instead, and this park just had one of those freestanding dip stations, has a dip and pull up bar. So I just did the thing that I've talked about on this podcast a lot before, where you sprint, you walk, you jog, you hit some station, and you do some exercises. So my first couple rounds were sprint, kind of walk, jog, just lightly get back to where you were, right? Doesn't have to be too formal. Set of leg raises, set of pull-ups, sprint, jog, walk, set of leg raises, set of pull-ups.
I love that.
Sprint, jog, walk, came back. Then I switched just to dips. I didn't even do anything else aside from dips. If I had a kettlebell, I probably would have thrown in swings at that point. I didn't have a kettlebell with me.
But hey, you didn't have it. Wasn't tragic. You had a thing. Yeah.
Wasn't tragic. So that type of workout is probably my favorite because it's feel like $1,000,000. It's minimalist. You can do it anywhere. It's a back pocket workout. Like, hey, when things go sideways, I can always use this framework. The framework is sprint, jog, walk, or sprint, walk, jog, and then some type of resistance. Big movement exercise. Yeah.
It's like sprint, jog, grind.
Right. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Oh, I like that. Sprint, jog, grind. That's a program name. Thank you, Dr.
Right. Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm here all day.
All right. Guilty pleasure. What is the workout you do when you're sure nobody else is in the gym?
I don't know that I have a specific workout, but I'm going to make a bit of a confession here. Okay. So two of my sons.
We are recording.
Yeah, we are recording. Yeah. Anyway, two of my sons who are working out now will accuse each other and me of occasionally shameless pumping. Okay. Right. Just shameless.
Just grabbing the two like 15-pound dumbbells and just going to.
Because I've got those two 35-pound dumbbells.
Right. Yeah.
That I forgot who gave them to us. Right. I love those. Right. And so. Not every time, not even every week, but occasionally when I'm done with my workout, I'll just grab onto those things and just shamelessly bodybuilder pump, curls, maybe some flies, triceps behind the head, not stuff I normally do.
Right.
And, and I have been caught by my sons shamelessly pumping and accused thereof, right?
Dude, yeah.
And I'll accuse them, but they're like, hey, we're like high school guys. This is what we should be doing.
This is expected of us, not expected of the virtuous father figure.
Yeah,
right?
But I'm like, hey, like your mother doesn't have needs too. Come on.
Right? Making your mom jokes with your kids.
Yeah, exactly. So I will admit, guilty pleasure. I do have a pair of dumbbells and I will do some shameless bodybuilder style pumping. Once in a blue moon,
dude. Not to be horrendously unoriginal, but I think I'm going to echo what you said. Except for mine might even be more subversive because, like, I do shameless pumping, but I often do it in a context where, to the outside observer, it might seem more purposeful than it actually is.
It's your real motive, inner motive.
The hidden motive is well known to Pat Flynn. So I did it just today, man. Yeah. I finally got to the Y and I was doing sets of presses. I was doing drop sets of presses and then front squats. And then
I'm sorry, if you're doing drop sets, it's pretty clear what's going on here.
First off, that isn't even the worst part. It was the supersets of the curls in between.
Nice.
That makes it seem like I'm doing some type of functional complex. But the true motive there is that betrays the shame of it, right? when you try and put it into some context that will like
you
hide
threw in some highly functional rehab band work in there, so you looked like the smart trainer you are.
Right. That betrays the shame, man.
Betrays the shame. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're trying too hard.
A real man. Whoa, there's my light just falling down. This studio is falling apart. I'm just gonna put this out of the way because I don't.
So I remember when my wife. This is way back. It's before we had kids. We were living in DC.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, we ended up with a copy of Muscle Fitness.
Of course,
right?
Yep.
And in in that they had like I mean muscle fitness, my God, right?
Mm.
But they had an article on training partners and like spotting each other, and of course it's just full of like sexually ambiguous pictures of guys like oiled up in speedos, like
Right.
like standing over each other, right?
Yeah.
But it was giving like recommended um like things to say when you're spotting your bro, right?
Hmm.
Like all you, dude, all you. And one of them was rock and fire, man, rock and fire. Right? I don't know. I still to this day I don't know what that means. And so now when I'm accused of shamelessly pumping,
Yeah.
Jen will come out with rock and fire, man. Rock and fire.
That's great when your wife gets in on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, see,
Definitely.
if I was a real man, dude, I wouldn't even try and put it into some pseudo functional complex. I would just take the dumbbells, go stand in front of the mirror under the squat rack, and just go to town, man. That'll be the challenge to
Yeah.
myself next
Yeah.
workout. Okay, what else we got? You have the list in front of you. I actually don't.
Yeah, let me pull the next one up. Okay, so
Yeah.
it was workout. Okay, argument for God.
Ooh, taking a hard shift to philosophy here. All right, you want to
Right,
go
right.
first, or you want me to? Mhm.
Oh man. Okay, so preferred. All right. Okay, this is interesting. So there's a whole, like exoteric thing that we're playing on here, right? Sort of
Mhm.
like the what do you like most publicly defend, and like what in your heart of hearts is really going on there, right?
Yes, yeah, I
You know
like
what I
this
mean? So yeah.
distinction. Right. Uh-huh.
So I think, for the exoteric doctrine, I would probably lean more toward your standard kind of existential Thomist kind of argument,
Yeah.
that
Uh-huh.
argue like the art. And actually, really, my standard would be Leibniz, the ultimate realization of things, right? I
Right.
mean, I
Which
find
we
that
did
argument.
a full series on for people
Yeah,
who want to check
I
that
find
out.
that
Yep.
argument, for all my misgivings about so many things, I find that argument irresistible, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Hmm.
okay. Now, but behind the scenes, okay, um, uh, the argument from motion in Aristotle's metaphysics, right? I think really
Mm.
moves me. Although I think
Hmm.
it's misunderstood, right?
Right.
That gets me. And also I think if you really ask me, like, Jim, like what gets you into God, it would be something more like Plato's Republic. Okay. Just this idea, like Plato's notion that ultimately there has to be a moral explanation for the universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not your typical moral argument, but I also think like Leibniz is going to cite that too in his own stuff, right? So
Yes.
for
Yeah.
me, this like the kind of the stuff, the more guilty pleasure stuff, the stuff that I think moves me the most, but I don't think I could really defend it in any rigorous way to like an analytic philosopher or something like that, would
Right.
be the stuff from the Greeks, like Aristotle's argument and Plato's argument. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fair, and I think I can see why somebody might feel a little guilty pleasure over Aristotle. Where if you spend a lot of time with Aristotle, you think you kind of understand Aristotle in Aristotle's terms. I think he's extremely forceful, but bringing it to the public can sometimes get people to sneer at you because they don't
Yeah.
understand Aristotle, or
Yeah.
think that his all of his physics is so outdated or something like
Yeah.
that. So you're just kind of inviting a lot of criticism, I guess, that you probably don't want to deal with, right?
Yeah. As if we're not equivocating on physics there, right?
Yeah, of course, right. But as you know, most people just don't understand.
Yeah. Don't
They
understand.
don't get that, right?
Yeah. And
Uh,
me, I'll kind of be like, I'm not going to bother. Right.
right.
Yeah.
I like what you say about Plato's, though, because you ultimately think that all explanation, for there to be ultimate explanations, has to come down to some type of explanation concerning the good or a moral explanation. I think that's
Yeah.
totally right. I think
Yeah.
that is totally
And
right.
man, we missed that. I mean, he says it in the Phaedo, right? Like
Hmm.
this is why he left the philosophy of nature, right? This is why he left the scientists, because he was told that I would get an explanation in terms of the best, and no one ever gave me one. And so now here I am on this like struggle. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, my favorite is, no surprise, it's just the family of cosmological arguments, but in the tradition of Thomism. And I really want to say it's not any particular argument. It's just the appreciation of a system that I
Hmm.
think is necessary. So I think the sort of constituent ontology of atomistic metaphysics is irresistible. You talked about irresistible. It's irresistible
Hmm.
to me. I mean, when we think about an individual and an existing individual, there's clearly some difference between an individual Fido and existing Fido.
Yeah.
What is that difference, right? And I think once we understand that either trying to reduce or eliminate notions of existence is coherent, it's absurd, it's in some cases contradictory, we're led to this existential constituent ontology where most, if not all but one thing, is a sort of derivative existence, right? It's something that is always pointing beyond itself. It is Fido bounding or patterning an active existence. Yet that active existence depends upon Fido for its pattern. Yet Fido can't pattern anything unless Fido already exists. And I think once you understand the deeper metaphysics here, you realize Fido would be impossible unless we get to something that just is its existence, the pure existence itself, right? And so it actually reminds me a little bit about the argument you just gave on your easy money argument for materialism, which is really kind of understanding a lot of deeper, in this case, metaphysics, right? That once you get that system down that I think is irresistible to make sense of reality, it's just a very quick shot to classical theism from there, right? So it's not, to me, my favorite argument for God. It's not really an argument at all, right? Of like, let's go look through the latest book on apologetics. Mm-hmm. It's a philosophical system.
Yeah.
That's
amen.
Entailed.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Without a doubt. Right.
And I've been trying the best I can to articulate that more and more, because I think it's just more productive for many reasons. What's my guilty pleasure? It's got to be Descartes and his ontological argument, right? Descartes is the guy I love to read.
I thought, that's cool.
And like the thing is Descartes tends to be a guilty pleasure for many different parties. If you're in the camps of traditional philosophers, everyone likes to point fingers at Descartes, right? But he's not even well liked among many modern analytic philosophers either, right? So so I'll leave that one there. But
I like that one. Okay, rock band.
Ooh, all right. Guilty pleasure. Can I go first on this one?
Yeah, please.
That's right off my head, dude. The band Steelheart. Are you familiar?
Yes.
I don't even know how guilty it is. It might be my Sublime. Like I will listen to that in public. I'll even listen to it in front of my wife and not fear divorce. Usually.
Yeah. Right.
But if people haven't heard Steelheart, first off, incredible musicians. The singer has a range like you just would not believe. Check out their one song where it's just absolutely I'll Never Let You Go. Just the title alone is kind of embarrassing. Do me a favor, gentle listeners, and gear that one up on YouTube and
please do
and treat yourself to a little Steelheart. Yeah. All right, you go with your guilty pleasure, and then we'll come back.
Oh man, I mean, as far as like rock bands go, there's so many guilty pleasures, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, since we're really disclosing here, right? Okay. The only time my wife ever claimed she ever doubted my sexuality was when I admitted I loved the band Of Monsters and Men.
Oh, my wife loves that band. Or at least she loves like two of their songs, right?
Yeah, like this is sort of Jen's point, is like everybody's wife loves that band.
But nobody's husband does.
Nobody's husband does, right? Yeah, so like Little Talks, I love that song.
That's dude. My wife plays it all the time. I'll tell you what though,
like I said, your wife plays it all the time.
I've never actively turned it off. I'll tell you that.
See, now we know something about you too. Yeah, so Of Monsters and Men would be my guilty pleasure band.
That's a good one. Yeah, that counts. All right, favorite. Oh man, you're asking me to pick a favorite rock band.
I know that's tough.
It's got to be AC/DC, and it's.
Man, I thought you were gonna go Van Halen.
No, and it's not because I don't have an extreme fondness for Van Halen. I do. It's just that AC/DC goes like some of my earliest memories, Jim, as my consciousness was first starting to congeal. Is of just AC/DC blaring, right? Because my mom would just have it going on the car all the time. So AC/DC started my love for music. It started me off wanting to be a guitar player. And it's a band that I've grown with. Like I appreciate AC/DC in new ways now that would not have been possible for me, 20 years ago. People think that they're very basic. They're not actually. They're incredible musicians that just do the basics so well that people who are untutored might fail to appreciate just how excellent they truly are. So yeah, I'm going all-time favorite AC/DC, hands down. The other thing about AC/DC, Jim, these dudes are unshakable, man. They just did not give a single hoot about what the cultural trends were in music at the time.
No,
They just
they didn't.
they and still to this
Yeah.
day, man, they're like, oh, you want to do glam metal? We're doing AC/DC. You want to do power
Yeah.
metal? We're doing AC/DC. You want to do modern rock? We're doing AC/DC.
This is
start
true.
to finish, man. Yep.
There's a genre that is AC/DC.
And it's unshakable, man.
Yeah, it's not heavy metal,
Yeah.
but it's not like your standard classic rock, like, you know, 70s big stadium stuff, right? You know? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And they never compromised, ever, like on anything, man. And there's something to be said about that. Your favorite?
Tool.
Yeah. Good
Yeah,
pick.
yeah.
Solid.
Definitely Tool. Yeah, I've taught them quite a bit in the show. Yeah, so I'm a big Tool guy. I'm also like recently I've really been in the Black Keys, Greta Van Fleet, some of that dirty rock stuff. But my favorite is Tool.
Awesome.
Soundgarden is Soundgarden, with the exclusion of a couple of the albums, would be up there too for me.
Yeah, I do like Soundgarden. I like Cornell's solo stuff too. God rest him. All right, let's do a few more from our list, Jim, and then we'll take questions from the audience. So, gentle listeners, please submit whatever questions you have. I see there's already
next up would be 90s movies. 90s movies.
Interesting. All right, so it's funny because I have my Ninja Turtles mug.
Nice.
I don't think that's either my favorite or a guilty's pleasure. The 90s.
So I'm looking up right now whether a certain movie was 90s or 80s.
Was Gladiator 90s?
Yes.
I might have to go with Gladiator.
Oh shoot, that was 1987. Darn it.
Dang it.
No. Gladiators was 90s. It was 90s.
All right, it's got to be right at the tail end though. That's cliche,
man,
but I love that movie.
I saw that movie while I was dating Jen, so that's like 99. Man, it might have been 2000. Might have been 2000.
We're putting it in 90s.
Yeah, totally.
Is
that okay? Right. Is that your esoteric or exoteric?
No, I don't change rooms when I put Gladiator.
Yeah, no.
I want people to see that I'm watching Gladiator. Yeah. You know? It's like
like if you were trying to like pick up chicks in a bar, you'd be like, I was watching Gladiator last night. It's kind of much.
I mean, Saving Private Ryan was 90s too, and that is a phenomenal movie, I think.
Yeah.
You know, there's some movies in the 90s that people hated that I actually like but that aren't guilty pleasures. Like I'll admit it, dude. I'm a Waterworld fan.
Sure.
Like you give me anything with Dennis Hopper, I'm gonna enjoy it, right?
Right. So, okay, here, I'm gonna toy with the question here a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, did you do your guilty one?
No, you go. Let me think about that one. Yeah.
When you say 90s, I think you and I might mean different things by it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when I hear 90s, I think Gen X. Right, I think like really quintessential Gen X stuff, right?
Which Gladiator is not.
Which is not. I mean, yeah. So I think like when you say like '90s music, I think grunge, or I'm thinking like Snoop Dogg and Dre.
That's
right?
correct.
I'm not thinking like Spice Girls.
And for Gen X, you're thinking like Breakfast Club type of movie.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So that would be That would be '80s, but it's still very Gen X, right?
Let's go with your category. That's better. I like that.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, I know you and I have different relationships to this whole oeuvre of arts, right? Okay, for me, it's like it is my milieu, right?
Of course, yeah.
But anyway, and so so for my guilty pleasures, I'm gonna go John Hughes stuff, and I'm gonna go a lesser known John Hughes, Some Kind of Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I'll tell you why it resounds with me. It is the most like 80s, 90s Gen X like working class angst movie ever made. Right? That's in a lot of the John Hughes stuff, right? Okay. But this one is really built on it. And that was like totally my mindset growing up. Like I really identified with this film. And they're all set in Chicago, right? And like there are like people I went to college with who grew up in the very suburbs a lot of the John Hughes movies were shot in.
Right.
You know what I mean? And who came up in the 80s. And like, so like all those movies are pretty nostalgic for me. And Some Kind of Wonderful, I think, is maybe the lamest one, but it might be the one to get me the most misty.
Sure. No, that's good, man. That's what we're after.
That's what we're after, right? So I'll have to admit that. Some Kind of Wonderful. Now, another one, I think this one actually, it's not a John Hughes movie. It's actually in the 90s though. And it's called, you probably haven't heard of it, called By the River's Edge or River's Edge.
No, I have not.
Dark movie. Dark movie. Okay. But it captures that, you know, late 80s, early 90s post-Cold War, like nihilistic moment, like profoundly, right? Dennis Hopper's in it playing an absolute madman.
How did I miss a
Yeah.
Hopper movie?
Yeah,
man?
exactly. Yeah, River's Edge. But I tell you, man, this is like, if you are under the care of a psychiatrist, like you need to be up on your meds before you watch this movie. It is not not uplifting, right?
Important warning.
Important warning. Yeah.
Yeah. Mount Athos brings up the Spice Girls. I admit it, man. If Spice Girls come on, I do not change the station. It brings me back. Same with the first Backstreet Boys album. Like when I was it had to be like first or second grade, man. I had AC/DC Live on cassette and the Backstreet Boys album on cassette, and I would go back and forth between those two.
Now, speaking of Dennis Hopper and Gen X movies, okay, so you've got the Tarantino stuff, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
But there's a movie, True Romance. Have you seen this?
I have. Yeah.
Okay, which I think was not directed by, but written by Tarantino.
Interesting.
And it's got one of the most brilliant but least PC monologues on American film by Dennis Hopper in that film. And one of my sons who really wanted to kind of like get a sense of the Gen X thing, I had him watch this movie and he was really taken by it. So I think True Romance would be like my second place one.
Okay, yeah, that's good, man. But that is your milieu, definitely.
That is my milieu.
I expected nothing but excellence from you in that department, and you certainly delivered. There was one other thing I wanted to say, and now I forgot it. So, all right, Jim, is there anything from the original list that you definitely want to hit before we turn to the audience questions here?
Okay, if video game was on there, I probably wouldn't be able to name one.
Right. My favorites, let me go real quick. I love all the Nintendo stuff. I'm a huge Nintendo fan.
Sure.
The latest Zelda game I thought was just phenomenal. I play with my kids all the time. It's probably my all-time favorite game.
Back in the day, I played a lot of Mario Kart with my kids.
I still play a lot of Mario Kart with my kids.
Yeah. Recent book is tough for me because there's so many, right? And sport, I would say my favorite sport in terms of watching, right? Okay. MMA. And I got to go guilty pleasure here now, right? Not just what I loathe, right? What would my guilty pleasure sport be? I'm not afraid to throw a little NASCAR.
Oh, dude, yeah.
I'm not sure how guilty I am about that.
That's the only one that might even kind of count maybe as a guilty pleasure that I can think of like a popular sport. Like it'd be like a guilty pleasure like when Jim's hanging around with all the other philosophers in the academy to say that he watches NASCAR, right? Yeah. Which means that he's an actual independent thinker.
I don't do well with those people anyway, so it's okay.
Yeah, yes, it's great. Yes, I see Mario 64 absolutely was a classic. I still play that game, man. The funny thing about video games is I don't really have a guilty pleasure video game. I'll just say that like growing up, I played a lot of video games, and video games have taken an interesting cultural shift because like if you played video games back when I was growing up, it was kind of like a thing you didn't like talk openly about. Like you were seen as like a nerd or a geek or something like that. That's just not the case anymore. Now it's like hip and cool to be a gamer. So it's just sort of an interesting thing, I think, to note that. All right, let's take some.
Yeah, when I was growing up, if like people in the video games are like, why don't you go talk to girls?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And like you expected, like, they're at their Dungeons and Dragons conventions and stuff like that too, or whatever. Right. Yeah. All right. Let us do some questions from the gentle audience and comments here. Anthony says his back pocket workout would be 100 push-ups, 100 bodyweight squats. Easy money.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I think Anthony has been like, I think I've seen him on Twitter. He's doing like 100 push-up a night thing or something like that. So that's a pretty good idea. Yeah.
I did 100 push-ups before I pounded a bunch of Chick-fil-A the other day just to make sure it all go to my pecs. Yeah. Talking about shameless idiocy, dude.
Did it in the parking lot of Chick-fil-A. Got a pump before you... There's like a high school flashback, hitting 100 push-ups before you go into Chick-fil-A so you have a good pump.
Dude, it was like I don't even know if this is better or worse what the actual situation was, but we were just getting Chick-fil-A for the kids' celebration, and like I was like, it was what I was eating. I'm like, I'm not going to eat Chick-fil-A at least until I do like some form of like physical exercise.
Right? You can't. Yeah. So, Dave Tate.
Like there's like a moral line that can't be crossed here, right?
Dave Tate, the powerlifting guru.
Yeah.
Right. Like had the best fitness blog of all times. Right. And I remember he had one special Christmas edition where he was talking about like every tip a meathead needs for a Christmas party. Right. Yeah. Okay. And one of them was like a sufficiently tight sweater. Right. And two, knowing how to time your pre-pump before the party, right? 'Cause he's like, if you do if because you got to like figure in the car ride and stuff, so you got to show up like maximally pumped
Right.
at the party.
It's yeah.
And he also said,
Sufficiently
like,
veiny, all that.
and
Yeah.
I think he had something there too about how, remember, like when you go to the bathroom to hit some push-ups and dips on the sink to keep the pump going, you take your sweater off so you don't sweat through it, right?
Somebody finally saying the quiet parts aloud, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
This is great.
I saw the idea of a meathead in the bathroom doing dips in the sink.
Is that you know they're doing it? You know,
Oh yeah,
you
yeah.
know
Yeah,
he's in there
totally,
doing. You know that guy's in there doing dips on the sink. You know it, right?
There's
Yeah.
a reason why Dave Tate thought it needed to be said.
Right. Yeah.
He was trying
Good
to help
for
the younger
him, man.
brothers out,
Is that post still around? I would love to read.
I have
that.
no idea. I don't know where it came from, Dave Tate, right? But
I don't know either. Yeah.
Yeah, EFS used to have a great like forum and blog thing going. He and Jim Wendler were hilarious. Not for the whole family, right?
All right, let's here's some more serious stuff now.
Yes.
This has been a fun Freaky Friday.
Yeah.
Bookish Brendan says, I know a lot of people bring up Voltaire when discussing atheism, philosophical pessimism, and responses to Leibniz's best possible worlds. Thoughts on Voltaire? Voltaire is actually one of the original philosophers I got really into in high school, Jim. But what are your initial thoughts? I think much less of him now than I did back then.
Yeah, I think the thing to remember of Voltaire is he's a rhetorician, right?
Yeah, and not a great systematic thinker, right?
Yeah, an interesting person, and also you get to be careful, like, in understanding what Voltaire's real intentions were. Like the guy actually, when he built his own estate, I believe had 2 chapels on it, and he employed 2 priests to say mass there every day, right? I mean, so he was certainly no fan of the French bishops, right?
Mm-hmm.
But only, a self-interested French aristocrat could have been a fan of the French bishops at the time that he's writing. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to make like some like Catholic saint out of Voltaire, but I think he's a much more complicated person than people.
Yeah, he's like a Hume, right? Hume is not just straightforwardly an atheist. He really isn't.
Oh, he's not. Yeah, and actually, by like today's standard, like Hume you would have characterized Hume as a political conservative in many ways, right?
To be sure, right?
To be sure, yeah.
Especially on social issues.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, look, none of these guys were like really into the little people having, but anyway, but also, with the Voltaire thing is, I think, reading Candide for information on Leibniz is just silly, right? It's not a serious attempt to engage with Leibniz.
It's a lampooning, right?
It's a lampooning, yeah. And I think actually in our 3-parter on Leibniz, we get into why his best of all possible worlds thing is has traction. I'm not saying, there's plenty to disagree with here, but it has traction, and not as a post hoc attempt to solve the problem of evil either. Like he thinks the best of all, this goes back to what we were saying earlier, the best of all possible worlds business follows from the principle of sufficient reason. If this weren't the best world, there wouldn't be a good reason for it to exist rather than other worlds, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So he actually thinks as a ground of rationality, the best of all possible worlds is the case. Okay.
Yeah. And let me highlight that. That's great. He thinks that the best of all possible worlds flows is a sort of necessary condition for rationality, not necessarily an answer to the problem of evil, even if it may also serve that function. Right?
And like it's an entailment from this set of core principles that Leibniz operates by, which all come back to principles of sufficient reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing too is Leibniz's best of all possible worlds notion is not a kind of philosophical optimism wherein like he thinks it follows that if you're just a good little boy, everything will work out for you, right? He does think ultimately like what is best for each individual substance in the universe will become the case, but it might be some individual substances kind of suck and their best isn't all that great, right? So I mean, I think once again, I would not see Leibniz as a philosophical optimist in that popular sense. There's a perfectly good sense in which he thinks that the best of all possible world entails enlightenment, progress, and all this. Okay, but most humanist atheists are not worried about that, right? Okay, and he doesn't think it entails that your cat is going to make it through its illness, right?
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent. Good.
But so I do encourage the listener to check out our series on Leibniz.
Yeah, one of my favorites that we did. That was a lot of fun. Philosophy Nerd says, "Do you guys like Ghost? And if so, what is your favorite song by them? Listen to much Ghost, Professor?"
I don't even know. I thought he meant the movie Ghost, which I'd say, God no.
Ghost is a Swedish band that I
Yep.
am not that familiar with, so
Yep.
unfortunately I
So
can't.
this reminds me of a, I don't know if this is guilty pleasure or not, or just a pleasure. Is one of my, I do like a band called Bongzilla, right? And so
Can't say I have their album.
yeah, once again, I would. I mean, I think it'll be easy to see where they're sitting on certain first order political issues, right? Right. But yeah, I do recommend check out Bongzilla sometime. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that actually relates to this next question. Here it is. Do you ever find yourself loving a work of media, film, music, book, but deeply disagreeing with the underlying philosophical positions? And how do you reconcile that? So let me answer this somewhat quickly. Yeah, quite often. I think I am mature enough to say, hey, I deeply disagree with what this film or music is either usually portraying, right? Sometimes, and we got to make, like distinctions. Like something can portray something without prescribing something, right? And that's an important distinction, right? The Bible portrays a lot of gruesome things, doesn't necessarily prescribe all of them, right? So we need to have some maturity there to make that distinction. I disagree with a lot of what I think modern propaganda films, most of them are prescribing, but I think I can still say, hey, that's a pretty good piece of art, all things considered, right? I'll give you one example. I'll give you one example. There's a movie that I actually quite like, but I think it is a horrendous piece of political propaganda, just absolutely silly nonsense. And that's the movie V for Vendetta. You ever seen this one, Jim?
I have not seen that one yet. I'm always told I need to see it.
Like just a good movie, man. Like the action's good, the acting's good. And it's drawing on Guy Fawkes, and it's unserious in terms of the actual history, and or just like totally ignores it.
Yeah.
But then pushes a lot of just crazy leftist nonsense and talking
sure.
points. Like so, like all the I won't get into it, but I'll just say like all of the underlying politics of the movie are flagrant, they're obnoxious. But I still say, hey, I like the movie. How do I reconcile it? I don't know if there's much to reconcile. I can just say I like this movie for what it is as a piece of art. Like I think these things were done well. I think the messaging behind it is just abject nonsense, and just leave it at that, right?
Yeah.
No, but there are some things that are so vile that I won't even consume because they're just so outwardly vile. But that's a different category of thing, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just spent this morning finishing an essay by Merleau-Ponty, and then like I had like a Twitter fit talking about it. About like in the essay, well, in part of the essay, he's defending what he calls his atheism. Though I think what he means by atheism is something different than what like a lot of us would mean by atheism. And I was deeply moved by this and like enlightened in many ways by what he was doing there. And and whether or not I ultimately agree with it doesn't rob it of its genius. And in the same way, I think you can, like, I mean, you can recognize a piece of music as a virtuoso performance, right? And still say, but yet it's not my jam, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And I think in a case like say that, I'm not going to reduce philosophy to aesthetic experience, but I think there's an analogy there. You could like look at this. This is a virtuoso piece of philosophy. And in fact, I learn a great deal about my own positions from it. And maybe maybe my positions have changed because of it, even though it doesn't fit with what I brought to it. Right.
Yeah.
And I think the openness of that is like part of what it is to be a philosopher. Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. Let me give one more example since we were talking about movies before. It's one of my favorite movies. I think it's incredibly moving, incredibly well done. But philosophically on a deep level, I disagree with it. Not because it's promoting anything that I think is like outwardly vile, like so much of just modern leftism. But it's a sort of nihilistic Buddhist movie. And the movie is called, and Jim, if you watch this, I'd love to get your thoughts on it. It's called Spring, Summer, Fall, Winter, and Spring. Spring, Summer, Fall, Winter, and Spring. It was in 2003. It's a South Korean film, and it's about a Buddhist monastery. And I just think it's a beautiful, deeply moving, kind of deeply sad, but mildly redemptive. It's a movie that really makes you think and really moves you. And of course, again, it's one on a deep level I'd have a number of disagreements with, but it's one of the, I think it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. So exactly. I would commend that to to the gentle listener.
I'm not trying to pick on the person who raised the question to us, but I think this notion of like how do I reconcile the fact that I'm moved by things I don't agree with? I think the very fact that we worry about that is one of our like deepest contemporary problems now. Right. Because it's sort of like the idea is like, maybe I shouldn't even be consuming these things I disagree with. Like maybe I shouldn't be encountering artwork I disagree with. Maybe I shouldn't encounter political ideas I don't agree with. I shouldn't encounter philosophical. You see what I mean? And so I think this is like kind of an expression of the balkanization that we're dealing with now, which is a deep problem for us. Right.
Yeah.
So look, sample freely, be willing to spend, commitments just long enough to appreciate something. Right. And then ask yourself what that does overall after the fact. Like take some risks with things. It's okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And there's obviously prudence here, and there is some stuff that again is so vile and corrosive on one's soul that you should avoid it. But that's not what we're talking about at this point, right?
I mean, if it's something that's designed to circumvent your rational faculties, like pornography, that's different.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, exactly. Right. Meow says, "Did you guys like The Last Samurai?" Yeah, Pat Flynn did actually. Pat Flynn tends to enjoy all of Tom Cruise's movies. I'm something of a Tom Cruise apologist. Say whatever you want about him and his personal life, but that guy can act, man.
Oh yeah. I saw that film in the theater when it originally was out, and I remember enjoying it. Yeah.
Yeah. The latest Top Gun, I love that movie. I thought it was phenomenal. His movie Edge of Tomorrow, which is like Groundhog's Day with space warfare, I thought was just incredible. So yeah, I do like that. Yeah, thank you. I see you got your eyes on something there, Jim. Go ahead and pull it up.
Just scrolling through.
Philosophy Nerd says, what do you guys think of Plantinga's evolutionary argument against naturalism, the EAAN? Is it a good argument? I went back and forth on this for many years. Now I think it is. Yeah, I do. So you know what? This is a guilty pleasure. I think a lot of people like this argument, but they're afraid to admit it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, I don't know if you want me to defend why I think it's a good argument, but I think at the end of the day,
that's a long story to tell, right?
I think at the end of the day, it is a good argument.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess I don't really like that it's just associated with Plantinga, right? Because it's an argument that occurs to a lot of people.
It's under the family of arguments from reason. That's right.
And I mean, in fact, I think one of the earliest iterations of it is Nietzsche, right? Okay, and so and I actually think what you're getting in Plantinga's argument is just one more iteration of like the fundamental problem of modernity, right? Or one of them, right? When we start to account for ourselves in terms of whether it's in evolutionary terms or what have you, when we start to account for our reasons in terms of causes as defined by modern science, it looks like our ability to account for anything is going to be undermined.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, it's going to undermine the conditions of knowledge and rationality.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Yes.
And so I see this as this is one of the problems of modernity. Like certainly this is on Kant's mind. This is deeply, deeply on Kant's mind. This is motivating much of what goes on in Kant, right? It's certainly then on Hegel's mind. It's definitely on Nietzsche's mind, right? I think you can even think that some of the things like the way that like Descartes wants to leave the mind out of the causal loop, that's kind of what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
And so I think what you're getting in Plantinga is just, and I think this kind of shows the kind of the historical ignorance of a lot of like contemporary philosophy, not Al, but just in general, right?
Yeah, they think that Plantinga like really did something incredibly novel here,
like
right?
This is in fact a problem that's been on our mind like maybe since Hobbes, right?
Sure, and it's so let me say I think that Plantinga's is an interesting species of the wider genus of arguments from reason, but it's not even my favorite articulation.
Yeah.
And I think there are deeper problems. Like if I were to like kind of usher in my collection of arguments against naturalism or materialism concerning rationality, Plantinga's would definitely be a secondary or tertiary consideration, right? Like I think there's more fundamental issues concerning semantics, meaning, determinate content, Rossian style arguments, right? Those to me are absolutely irresistible and convincing. And then like Plantinga's is just an additional layer of difficulties that the naturalists would have to step through. But no, in general, I spent a number of years kind of on the fence, kind of back and forth on it. And I think I've read all the most relevant literature on it, and I think at the end of the day, it is a good argument. It should be something that deeply concerns a naturalist. Honestly, yeah,
I agree. I agree.
All right, let's take one or two more.
Sure.
Marcher says, "Don't you miss the old Zelda formula? Breath of the Wild stripped away too much, I thought." You'll have to explain more to me, good sir. Maybe some of the puzzle elements. Is that what you're talking about? I mean, Breath of the Wild was definitely was a lot of novelty there, but to me, I just thought it was just such a magnificent game. All right, why don't you pick the closer here for us?
Let's see. So I wanted to find something by Mount Athos in Aquinas Fellowship, because he seemed to have a lot of good tips here on how to pump up at a party.
Yeah, you did, dude. Push-ups at the sink. Always
push-ups. right, yeah. Well done. Yeah. I'm not saying it's ever happened.
I used to do that at school between classes.
That a boy.
This guy knows all the tricks. That's brilliant. Yeah.
It's like a 12-step group. You know, my name's Jim, and I used to do push-ups in the men's room to get ready for class.
That's brilliant. Just brilliant.
Yeah, that was the only one I wanted to make sure we got to.
What was Thomas Reid in light of Hume? That's a good question. I mean, some think that he's a corrective, right?
Yeah.
Reid. How would you summarize Reid? I mean, he's somebody who's trying to get epistemology back on track.
Yeah.
He tries to. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I think Plantinga in some of his later work, right, like wants to identify himself with Reid in some ways.
Oh, Plantinga draws heavily from Reid, definitely.
You know,
right.
So I mean, I think if you want your original, your OG proper basicality guy, it's going to be Thomas Reid. Yeah,
and he's big into self-defeat type arguments, performative contradictions of showing like he's actually quite good on the problem of skepticism, Thomas Reid.
Yeah.
And battling against the skepticism of his age, which who knows what he would have thought about the skepticism of our age, right? Mm-hmm.
I think Kant issues him like a terrible beatdown in the Critique as like an inadequate reply to Hume, right?
And he's definitely got some like accounts of like perception and stuff like that. Reid does that are probably not going to fly in our contemporary understanding of know, stuff like that. But but that's again a matter of distinguishing his deeper principles from his modern science of his time.
But Reid's one of those like I think great B teamers of the history of philosophy, right? And I should be careful with that, because my understanding is if you took comprehensive exams before like the 1940s, 30s in an English-speaking university, it would have been Reid would have been the guy representing the Scottish Enlightenment, not Hume.
Yeah.
That like, in fact, that kind of changed with logical positivism, like kind of was more into Hume than Reid. And so at one time, like Reid would have been like the textbook, the Scottish Enlightenment guy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think, yeah. It is interesting. You know, there's a number of, it's interesting to see how that has shifted. Another person who falls on that category would be like Boethius. I mean, for so long, philosophical education just was Boethius. It's like it just was Boethius. And now, like, shoot, how many people actually know, or let alone have really studied or read Boethius?
Think of how, like, I guess in the scholastic universities, right? It would have been essentially your master's degree. You would have had to have like written, you know, commentary on Peter Lombard. Right.
Yeah.
Who the hell has read Peter Lombard today? Right. I'm sure someone in our audience has. Okay. In the Latin. Right. Okay. Right. But like, I'll admit, I have never read Peter Lombard. Right.
Yeah. Mount Athos says, love me some Boethius. So do I, man. I wish he was, I wish him to be properly restored on the A team of philosophers. He's just so brilliant. All right, Jim, give us some, tell us about your courses again before we close this out.
Yeah, by all means, jdmadden.com. Go to the philosophy section. You'll find links to my courses on Gumroad. And as always, they are available for what you can afford or what you think they're worth, and enjoy them. I've got one on Heidegger and the question concerning technology, and I've got one on Nietzsche and nihilism, the death of God. So have at it.
Brilliant. Gentle listeners, thanks for tuning in. A few announcements here on my end. I also have courses on Gumroad as well. And I think our courses are a nice complement because I'm doing a lot of like the metaphysics, natural theology, and you're just doing all this other cool complementary stuff. So people should get them all. And I'll try and link all that stuff afterwards. Sorry, guys, I'm a little late. Let me say a few things. Do you mind, Jim?
No, it's fine.
In general, Jim and I both have a lot going on in our lives. For example, so I'm writing 2 books right now. I've got another kid, number 5, on the way. I'm running my own business. And that business itself is incredibly time consuming. I'm in a exceptionally mediocre rock band that actually has a number of gigs this summer that I have to learn a ridiculous amount of music for.
I think 60 songs, isn't it?
Like 60 songs. I'm cranking away. Music is another love interest of mine that I just obsessively do anyways. Got my wife, relationship. So there's articles, stuff I do with Catholic Answers, right? It's a lot. And I just want to say, if I'm a little slow on some things, like getting show notes up or stuff like that, I appreciate the bit of the patience there. You guys are awesome. But sometimes I just get taken over by other matters. And same thing with like questions and comments. One of the reasons we do Freaky Friday is I just don't have the time to engage in comment sections of social media. I love all of your comments. It helps the thing. So please keep the comments and questions coming on the videos. But honestly, I just can't do it. So that's why we dedicate these Friday segments. So if there's something you really want answered or discussed, just bring it to a Friday session. We'll be happy to do that for you. So sorry, I just wanted to get that out there.
I like
before.
that. I like that. I liked it a lot.
All right, guys. Thank you for all the support. Please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll catch you guys later. Peace.